Good morning, Jennifer. I think it is Councillor Santos that will get us going this morning.
All right, if we're ready to go, I'm going to just get things going along. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at our budget session in Town Hall with the business community this morning. I'm Councillor Rowena Santos and represent wards 1 and 5 in the City of Brampton as a regional councillor and city councillor, but also as vice chair of economic development together with Councillor Tour, who is the chair of economic development, and welcome everyone. There have been a few things that have changed this year with strong mayor powers. Of course, the mayor is seeking all of your feedback, and we're very fortunate to have a collaborative mayor who is also making sure that council colleagues around the table take part in this very important process. And I'm very much, together with Chair Tour, looking forward to getting your feedback and making sure your questions get answered. Before we officially begin, I'd like to make sure that we acknowledge that we are gathering here today on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and before them, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Huron-Wendat. We also acknowledge the many First Nation, Métis, Inuit, and other global Indigenous people who now call Brampton their home. We are honored to live, work on, and enjoy this land. Thank you again for bringing your ideas and questions to the session today. I can't join you for most of this session. I'm currently actually in Ottawa at our FCM advocacy days just before the fall economic statement. We also have board meetings here in Ottawa. However, I will be multitasking and will be listening to everyone as well during this session. I'm going to pass it over to Chair Tour to continue on with the session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gurpratap Singh Tour, and I'm the Regional Councillor for Wards 9 and 10 with the City of Brampton. I'm also the Chair for Economic Development Committee. Our Economic Development team is responsible for driving investment into Brampton to promote job growth in our community through foreign direct and domestic investment. With dedicated sector managers and investment service team, site selection team, the Brampton Entrepreneur Center, and more, the Brampton Economic Development Office is here to support businesses of all sizes. Can I have the next slide, please? Business retention and expansion is a vital area of focus for our Economic Development Office. During each investment attraction mission, we include a BR&E component that sees staff and elected officials meet with key decision makers that represent the international HQ of businesses in Brampton to ensure that they are familiar with our value proposition. This is important because we know that 80% of investment in our community comes from a business already in the city. Some recent expansions include MDA, the new global headquarters and Space Robotics Center of Excellence, at $100 million for more than 700 jobs in the city. Maple Lodge Farms expansion to 250,000 square feet of space with 400 jobs. Electra's new operations center for $52 million with 400 jobs. Stellantis received close to $1 billion in funding from the federal and provincial governments to help retool its Canadian auto plants, including its facility in Brampton to make electric vehicles. Magna is expanding with a new battery enclosure facility in Brampton to support the Ford F-150, Lightning, and the future OEM programs. This new 490,000 square foot leased facility will manufacture battery enclosures for electric vehicles. Operations will begin in Q2 of this year We're supposed to begin Q2 of this year, roughly with 560 new jobs are expected at full production. Axiom Packaging is expanding its operations and construction is underway with a new manufacturing facility in Brampton. They're investing over $80 million and employing 250 team members at this location. Lululemon Athletica, a popular clothing company, announced that it is building its largest distribution facility in North America right here in Brampton. This facility will bring more than 1,500 jobs to our city. Pet Value, Canada's leading specialty realtor of pet food and pet related supplies, has opened the largest pet specialty distribution center in Canada, a 670,000 square foot state of the art facility bringing 500 jobs to the city of Brampton. Can I have the next slide, please? Brampton is driving in its innovation and technology sector by putting the necessary building blocks in place for a world class innovation district. The Innovation District has a sharp focus on startup scaling, investment attraction, and talent development. The Brampton Innovation District provides support for entrepreneurs and new business owners through every stage of their journey, from education, training, and reskilling to support for companies of all sizes and across all sectors. Some of the strong partnerships forming the foundation of the Innovation District include the Brampton Entrepreneur Center, co-working space, and small business resources. Located in a spacious storefront co-working space designed to fuel creativity and productivity, Beck hosts frequent seminars and offers business plan reviews and consultations with advisors at no cost to local entrepreneurs and innovators. The Altitude Accelerator, new specialized business incubation and accelerator space. Peel Region's scale up organization, the Altitude Accelerator helps startups take their business to the next level. The accelerator is a dynamic catalyst for tech companies and has specialized resources for companies working in the areas of Internet of Things, clean tech, and advanced manufacturing. The Founder Institute, world's premier idea stage accelerator. The Founder Institute is a global accelerator firm that provides support to high potential early stage companies through specialized programming, training courses, access to funding, and introductions to world class mentor network. The Brampton Venture Zone, startup pre-seed incubator led by Toronto Metropolitan University, modeled after the university's world-renowned Zone Learning Network. BVZ is a pre-seed, non-equity incubator dedicated to building high-performing founders and growing early-stage technology startups into market-ready ventures. The incubator will bring aspiring entrepreneurs, current founders, and key industry partners together to build solutions that address hyperlocal issues in the community. Last night, we celebrated the 5th-year anniversary of the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst headquarters that are right here in Brampton. The Catalyst helps companies seize the opportunities and tackle the challenges of cybersecurity through collaboration with industry, governments, and academic partners. The Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst is a not for profit organization owned and operated by the Toronto Metropolitan University and offers training and certification support for cyber scale ups, research and development, and more. The cornerstones of the Catalyst include Canada's first cyber range, cybersecurity training, and research and development are positioning Brampton to be Canada's hub for cybersecurity. As I mentioned last night, we celebrated the 5th-year anniversary of the Catalyst, and we were so glad that Rogers announced last night that they will further commit $15 million towards the Catalyst, and RBC committing $1 million towards this Catalyst. Uh, the accelerator that's led by the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst and Toronto Metropolitan University's DMZ Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst, in partnership with DMZ, has launched the first cybersecurity accelerator of its kind in Canada. This one of a kind accelerator will deliver cutting edge interactive cybersecurity training for those entering or looking to expand in the cyber field. The multidisciplinary and interactive environment will provide training, growth strategies, mentorship, and resources to support the most promising cybersecurity scale ups and help them succeed nationally and internationally. Another fantastic partner that we have is the Sheridan Edge programming led by Sheridan College. The Edge Entrepreneur programming connects startups with resources from within the Sheridan network and provides workshops, seminars, and training to support development and growth of businesses. Last but not the least, the Brampton Beehive. The international startup incubator, the Beehive offers incoming foreign startups and entrepreneurs the tools, resources, and space to establish and scale up their businesses in Canada faster through the Startup Visa program. It will also provide co-working space, mentorship, and access to funding. Can I have the next slide, please? And that concludes my presentation. I hope you have seen how diverse, connected, and talented Brampton is. With so many new expansions and business developments happening in our city, it presents a significant amount of investment opportunities for our economy. And we will continue to drive new investment and job growth in our city. And thank you. And with that, I will pass it on to Mayor Brown.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tor. Hopefully everyone can hear us here. We are doing this digital call from City Hall, and I'm joined with key members of our finance team and economic development team, including Claire Barnett, who's our Director of Economic Development, and Nash, who is our City Treasurer. We are beginning the process of consulting on the city budget as we build our city budget for 2024. And we have a tradition in Brampton where we want to reach out to the business community to get your feedback. I'm a big believer that the more minds you have looking at the challenges we face today, the better ideas and solutions we're going to get. And so this call specifically to get the Brampton business perspective. We're going to be having coffee chats with residents to deal with every issue from snow removal to recreation centers. But this call, we want to really ask the question, how do we build a Brampton advantage? How do we make you more competitive? We want to create an environment where you can invest, you can hire, you can grow. We want to see Brampton businesses succeed. We're certainly seeing some encouraging signs. The amount of construction value being added to the community has exploded at $2 billion in 2022, which represents a 131% increase from $865 million in 2018. You look at those numbers, this astronomical growth in investment in construction, it's a sign that people want to build and invest in Brampton. But we know we're in a global economy. The challenges are real, that many businesses have struggled post-pandemic to get back on their feet. And as much as we're seeing significant new investments, part of our strategy at City Hall is to, just as we vigorously chase new investments, we want to focus on retention. We want to make sure our existing businesses are healthy, given the challenges that exist today. And it's not lost on us that high interest rates, high inflation are wreaking havoc on some of the traditional business models that many businesses have relied on. And there's nothing I find more heartbreaking to hear about the struggles of some of our businesses that have a long history in Brampton. It's why during this budget, we asked the question, how can we help you succeed? Because when you succeed and you hire locally, our city is succeeding. Frankly, your self-interest is the same self-interest as the city. If you're prosperous, we're prosperous. The city depends on the success of our business community to create stable finances. You are a major revenue generator for the cities. When I look at some of the success stories in Brampton, there are some strengths we have, and I think we need to play into our strengths and at the same time mitigate our weaknesses. And hopefully we can hear from you today and the challenges that you see. When I look at playing into our strengths, we have a human resources advantage in Brampton. Business tour after business tour I go on, I hear about a Brampton advantage that we have available labor that many companies struggle to find elsewhere. We've got a highly trained, skilled population that is ready to roll up their sleeves and work. That is a Brampton advantage. 5 years ago, we had among the highest taxes in the GTA, and that's changed. Now you look at the tax rates in the GTA, we have some of the most competitive taxes. We are making dramatic improvements in terms of our competitiveness on taxation. We want to make sure that you can confidently say that there is an advantage to being in Brampton in terms of your location in the GTA on a tax basis, on a human resources basis, And I think some of the evidence of that is playing out. You look at, Magna's electric battery facility. Last year, they picked Brampton. They could have gone anywhere in Canada, but they chose Brampton to have this massive new investment. You look at Pet Value, their largest facility in Canada, and they chose Brampton. You look at Lululemon, their largest factory in North America, and they chose Brampton. And what's exciting about some of these investments is these are not insignificant investments, massive investments in robotics, massive investment in new facilities, beautiful new facilities that I've seen firsthand. So there is momentum. We need to maintain that momentum, build upon it, and protect the existing employment base that we have. So we're going to open up the floor to questions, but we're here to listen and to work on your behalf. I would note, in some of the initial work we're doing on this budget, I have heard loud and clear that there are challenges with Brampton Transit, that we are over capacity. And I'd love to hear how that may affect you. Do you have employees who are struggling to get to their place of work? And we're looking at a pretty significant investment into Brampton Transit this year of new buses and new operators. And I'd love to learn more about how that affects businesses. I've gone with our transit manager, Heidi, on a few bus rides, some of our busiest bus rides. And I've had riders tell me that sometimes they see 4 or 5 full buses pass by that they can't get on. I know we have work to do there. We have the fastest growing ridership in the country. Our planning commissioner, Steve Ganesh, is working on being the city with the least red tape. I've heard some challenges that businesses have when they look at an expansion, or some of the burdens of the planning process. Some of that is provincial regulation beyond our control, but we're really looking at ways of how we can alleviate that burden too. And I know Steve is greatly focused on that task. So let us know. Let us know where there are burdens and challenges. We've got a terrific economic development chair in Councillor Gurpratap Tour, and he's going to be the MC today and the moderator for the questions. I guess what I'd say is every question's on the table. Feel free to ask anything you want, and we'll do our best to handle it. It doesn't need to be a question submitted in advance. Any thought you have, any idea you have, how we can better serve you, we are all ears. So, Councillor Tour, over to you to moderate, which is hopefully an opportunity to get some real, honest feedback.
Mayor Brown, if you wouldn't mind, I'm actually still stuck on a highway, so I will pass it back to you to moderate the questions today.
Okay. Well, Councillor Tour, that speaks to the challenges we have with gridlock, which is why we need to continue to see investments in our transportation corridors. So I'm happy to jump into the questions. And what is the first? Who's the first? Do we have a hand up in the queue for questions from businesses? We're going to get our tech people here to figure out who we have.
Yep. We're just unmuting the caller now. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor Brown and councillors. This is Rihanna Khan from the Downtown Brampton Food District. I'm happy to be on the call here with you guys. I have actually a couple of concerns with a lot of the business owners. I'm also part of the board on the BIA. We have a couple of restaurants who are trying to operate on 24-hour schedule, specifically Subway, because they have Uber Eats and DoorDash. So one of the concerns for the restaurants are they have staff who need to work overnight. However, there's no overnight parking to accommodate for them to operate their businesses and for their employees to park. In the morning, when the employees do go out and are finished their shift, they actually have parking tickets on their car. So I think it's something that we need to really work on, or if there's a solution that I don't know about, if you could help out with that.
Okay, great suggestion. Obviously, if there's a market that a local business can meet in association with Uber Eats, we don't want to lose that potential benefit. So we can look into that. I know we had a parking plan presented to council last week, but Claire Barnett,
Brown, if I could jump in.
yeah.
This is Councillor Tour speaking again. Thank you for that feedback, and that is very critical, and I think it's very timely because tomorrow we will be deliberating on our Brampton parking plan once again. It was presented to us at committee last week, and we chose to, get some more feedback before we can make a decision on it tomorrow at council meeting. So your feedback will be considered once we get into deliberations tomorrow again, because we did hear from the BIA about other concerns regarding parking. So in order to make sure that we have parking regulations that are fair to downtown businesses, we're keeping that in mind because we're going to start enforcing paid parking again, but we're looking to actually defer that till the construction period in the downtown Brampton area is completed. So we will take into consideration about businesses that are going to work 24 hours and have employees that need parking to find special accommodation to ensure that they're able to do so without being ticketed.
Perfect.
Thank you, Councillor Tour, for that a comment and very timely on the question. So we'll work on that. We certainly don't want to. Last thing someone's working throughout the night is going to want to see is the ticket in the morning. I mean, they're working hard to help the local business succeed.
Thank
Okay,
you so
we'll go
much.
to our next question.
I believe Rihanna had another question.
Okay.
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you. That's all.
We'll pull up on the queue our next question.
The next one is Jacqueline. We're trying to unmute her now. Jacqueline, you can go ahead.
Hi, Jacqueline, can you hear us?
Is everyone
Yes.
hearing me?
Yes, we
Good
can hear you.
morning.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mayor Brown, and to all the hosts on the co-hosts on the panel. Are you hearing me?
We are. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Okay. My name is Jacqueline Anderson, and I'm the owner of Stew Cleaners, Inc. I'm just calling in this morning to ask about, I've started business here in 2011, since 2011 till present, and I would like to know how can I tap into some of the big contracts, how to do business with the city, and to provide my excellent, with my professional cleaning technicians, how can I tap into some of these jobs?
Okay, well, let me start off. First of all, we love to see local businesses that are, that benefit from the ability to do work in the city of Brampton with the city. And we run a very transparent city hall, so everything has to be tender. Everything over $25,000, there is a very public, transparent process where any company can bid on it. And maybe we can have Nash speak to the process we have for a local business that wants to submit a tender and where those, and the website location for where all the government tenders are listed. So there'll be provincial tenders, federal tenders, and city tenders, and any submission is listed publicly, and so we can share that website information for you, and then we'll just wish you the best of luck to be successful.
Okay,
Nash
I
or
want
Claire.
to. Okay, thank you for that. But I want to let you know that I also joined the bids and tender. But what information I've seen them send to me is places that are far away from me. Sometimes things, jobs that are not even in my category. Because I'm a member of the bids, and I joined the bid and tender now about some 4 or 5 years. Never seen anything come to me from Brampton.
So maybe you're looking at the wrong site. If Nash wants to share with you the appropriate site, and everything is publicly available, so anyone can bid on it.
Okay.
Over $25,000.
Okay.
So if I can just add, if you're on the Brampton's bids and tender website, you should be on the right website. But we can also look into adding you into the mailing list for the city for different tenders. So if you can please pass on your name through our staff and your email address, we'll make sure that you're added to the email list.
Okay, thank you
I
so
hope
much.
that helps.
And I've also, oh yeah, and I've also signed up for doing business with Brampton in the next, because I really want to contribute to my city. Ever since I migrated here, this is where I live, so and work.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
Okay,
thank
and
you
I'm going to
so
ask
much.
Allison or Nash to put into the chat box that website address so everyone can see it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. The next question in the queue.
Rihanna has her hand up again. Just unmute her. Rihanna, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think I forgot to remove my hand.
Okay. There's no more hands up online. I believe there's some questions in the room.
I could ask some questions of the mayor that were submitted beforehand.
So we can look at some of the questions we've had online from businesses in Brampton. What are we doing about traffic offenses in Brampton? Well, first of all, we are in the process of really investing in our camera system. Knowing that the police are over capacity. Right now, our camera system is unable to have the processing capacity to meet with some of the calming measures we want to see. So this council is making investments so that we have the ability to have 150 speed enforcement cameras throughout the city. That will deal with negligent drivers who race in community safety areas. We want there to be zero tolerance on negligent drivers, and there's no way to change behavior like hitting their pocketbook. So that is unfolding early this year. Another question is, given the 154% increase in food bank usage and visits in Brampton, what specific measures are happening for food insecurity? We do a lot of our work to combat food insecurity through the region appeal. As you know, your tax dollars go to both the region appeal and the city of Brampton. So when it comes to food insecurity and shelter spaces, that is the table that we make those decisions at. And the region appeal just set up the Brampton Food Hub, established by the Peel Community Collaborative, a collective of long-standing not-for-profit food agencies in Brampton working to fight hunger and food insecurity in the community. The Food Hub will work to increase the amount of healthy and culturally appropriate food available to vulnerable members of the Brampton community. I would note that I also understand that our shelter system is over capacity, 321% capacity. We've seen a surge in asylum claims. We went from 4% of our shelter spaces being used up by asylum claims to 68%. And so I've been advocating to the federal government for help for additional shelter capacity. The federal government funds that shelter capacity for refugees, but does not for asylum claimants. So this is sort of a missing hole in the system. And so I'm very close to a deal with the federal government to fund that additional shelter capacity. I'm hoping for an announcement in a matter of days, and I've been speaking almost on a daily basis with the federal minister, Mark Miller. So hopefully we'll see some help on the horizon there. There was a question, is there budget help for daycare owners? And there is. The government of Canada announced a tremendous plan to support childcare in Canada. This is sort of one of the signature promises of the federal Liberal government. And they are working through the region appeal to help us with achieving that $10 daycare locally. And so there is a number of grants being given out to new daycares being set up across the region appeal. I believe there was just a series of about 12 of them that were handed out last month. And so there's a number of new daycares coming online, $10 daycare. So this is very encouraging because historically we didn't have the childcare capacity to handle, but because of these federal subsidies, we're going to have the type of childcare services that you've seen elsewhere I think this has been common in Quebec, but it wasn't common in Ontario. And so that is, we'll start to see evidence of this as early as next year. And I know the city has offered up our rec centers to be rented for that purpose. So at the new Embleton Recreation Center and at the renovated Chris Gibson, there's going to be childcare, $10 childcare incorporated into the fitness facilities, which is very common in the Nordic model where you sort of have everything together. Our next question is electrification. We are very serious about electrification. We're in the process of making our Susan Fennell Sports Complex a net zero facility. We have a loan from the federal government to electrify all of our transit buses. We purchased our first electric fire truck. Brampton is leading by example on the environment. And we are very serious about our ambitions to have an 80% reduction of emissions by 2050. I know Councillor Santos is on the line and she's participating in the FCM conference in Ottawa, but she's been very involved, along with Councillor Tor, in the very real ambitions we have, not just to talk about the environment, but to be an example in the country. And whether it's our tree planting campaign, our retrofit of recreation centers, the electrification of our municipal fleets, we are in a much more meaningful fashion that I think is expected to see in government really transitioning to a green economy.
Take a question.
Oh, we have another question from the audience? Okay. Vivian.
Alison, the mayor, can take a question from you.
Good morning. Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning. My name is Vivian. I am the founder of Bethel Outreach Community Services and one of the collaborative partners in the newly opened food hub. Mayor Brown was there to graciously help us on the day we opened our food hub. And I have a question concerning, and also we work with, we do our weekly feeding for the African refugees. We do feed them appropriately, culturally appropriate African food once every week. And also having to house a number of them in my already very tiny house, I have a question, and because this is a situation we've been fighting, as we all know, one of our community members who passed away, who happens to be a Nigerian. So our community right now is very, very unhappy about what's going on as everyone else. My question is for Mayor Brown. We do know I've been a resident of Brampton for 22 years. And this is a dire emergency situation. We are wondering, why are we not able to house temporarily or just a place to sleep overnight, use the community centers? We have halls. I know many of the community centers because I've done many events in many of them. We have halls where we can use for them to just be out of the cold to sleep overnight, because if churches, houses, if we are housing them, I know churches that have 20, 15, 30 people sleeping on just to get them out of the cold. So why are we not doing the same with our community centers that are everywhere in Brampton? As well as I know there are many empty buildings, and we have brought this to the City of Brampton. I believe I also spoke to you on this issue. There are many buildings that are waiting to be repurposed. Why are we not using these empty spaces to house these people temporarily till a permanent solution can come?
So we actually don't have empty buildings waiting to be repurposed. There are buildings that may be empty, but they're not owned by the city. They're owned privately, and so we can't tell a private landlord that they have to let us use their building. What I would say is that we have 500 shelter beds. We have 1,500 people using those beds, and so we are at 321% capacity, and we are struggling with this surge in asylum claimants. Historically, it has always been the federal government that has funded this space. And so we made our first public call for help in July. again in September, then again in October, predicting that when the weather got colder, there would be a potential crisis. We have a proposal. We've been able to, there's 2 private facilities that we have leased. And as long as the federal government signs off, we'll be able to take immediate control of those 2 private facilities where we can add 800 shelter beds. This will solve the crisis we're in. I am expecting that to be signed off any day now. Any day now that should be signed off, and we'll be able to meet the crisis. We've also advocated, Mayor Chow and myself, Mayor Chow from Toronto, for a welcome center to really coordinate the increase in asylum claimants due to the change in the criteria by the Government of Canada. And so I believe if our proposal is signed, if it is signed off on by the minister, which he told me he's going to, that we'll be able to house these asylum claimants very quickly. We've also asked for emergency funding to, while this shelter is being set up, to be able to use local hotels. So we are looking creatively at ways to help with the surge. I would say across the GTA, I've been asked about rec centers or schools. The schools are not within municipal control. That's done by the province of Ontario. We have not had any success in allowing schools to be opened up. And then in terms of recreation facilities, part of the challenge with recreation centers is we do use them when there's extreme cold warnings, but the same thing is they are heavily used. And so, we have recreation centers that tend to be used from 6 a.m. to midnight. And so it is not an ideal solution. But, we're willing to use any tool to help us mitigate this crisis. But we have a proposal that we believe will solve it, that I'm hoping to see announced very soon. We put together exactly what was needed. And I'm, like I said, very optimistic that it's going to be announced by the federal government in the coming days.
There's a question in the chat.
There's a question in the chat? Yeah.
No, these are links to some resources.
There is one.
Artist funding. What's the question?
There's
We can't see the questions. My other question, will there be more artist funding for Brampton artists?
So yes, this council has really rallied behind the Brampton Arts Organization. As you know, that was removed prior to 2018, and now we've revitalized it, rebuilt it, and we've got a great organization to be a curator of arts investments in the city. Now, I don't have the specific numbers on me, but I looked at the increases in arts funding. It was quite dramatic. Do you have those exact numbers we could share?
I don't currently have them there, but I could make them available.
Okay, yeah. So we have well added in the link in terms of the increases in arts funding, but this is one area we've seen dramatic increases over the recent years. If Councillor Santos is on the call still, I know she has been one of the leading champions for additional arts investments in the city. I know she's also multitasking with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference. And Michael Halls, who is helping us with the budget development, I know also sits on that. Michael, do you want to add to what we're seeing on the arts right now?
Well, we've made some pretty unprecedented investments in particularly workshops and services that assist artists in becoming professional. So we've done a lot of work with emerging artists. The budget that the council has given us is probably double anything that was previously received by the Arts Council. So there have been substantial increases in funding to support the arts community in general. Our offices are now at 8 Nelson Street. We have a small but very hardworking staff that are working to support artists. There have been public commissions. So it really is a completely different situation in the arts today compared to what it was when the Arts Council was dissolved in 2015. So this council has done a complete turnaround actually on its approach to public art and supporting professional and emerging artists in the city of Brampton, and substantial investments have been made.
If I can also add to that, I also sit on the BAO advisory panel right now until it becomes fully independent in the new year. And the city had requested for public input for the new art center that the city is proposing. We've got a lot of feedback to that, and I think if we can drop a link to that in the chat, if we're still open to that feedback, I think participants can reach us via email and provide us their feedback for the new art center. But definitely we are seeing a growing investment in arts, and I think this is an appropriate question for the business roundtable, because with more investments in art, we attract more people into our city, and artists themselves bring a lot of economic value to our city. So Brampton is home to many, many artists. We have fantastic ambassadors for the BAO that have done so well globally, and they take they take Brampton and they put it on the global map. So the more we can invest in this, the more we can grow our arts locally, helps Brampton to survive better economically.
Okay, in the chat.
There's a couple more in the chat.
There's a couple more in the chat.
We've seen there's a.
Yes, we do have a few questions. They're just saying thank you. Is there any great meeting? So we don't have any further questions on the issue of artists. Bill, we do also.
There's a few questions in the.
Okay, I'm not seeing it.
While we're reading files and to pull them up, we can go back to the questions that people submitted. Mayor, Councillor Troy, there were questions about support for entrepreneurs and for startups, and what our plans are to help grow and support them over the next couple of years.
Councillor Troy, we'll let you lead on that one as the chair of our economic development committee.
Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
What we're we seeing from the budget for the startups in the next year, what we're increasing. In terms of support of that, maybe share a bit about your vision for that as well.
Yeah,
that you're looking to bring to them.
Yeah, as earlier I talked about Back to Brampton Entrepreneur Center. But in this budget, what we're calling Back 2.0, the next version of Back, to ensure that that space is available almost 24/7. We'll get to that point where we can have that space available every single day of the week at all hours. It is a space that is free to use for startups. Given that they participate in our programming, they come and there's tons of workshops that are hosted by the industry partners that we have. Very recently, we had a workshop hosted by MNP to educate startups on their accounting values and making sure that their businesses are taking the right measures for them to succeed. So there's a lot of these workshops that we always have at the Brampton Entrepreneur Center, but I know there's been a request for this space to be open longer, this space to be open on the weekends. And I think due to previous staffing shortages, we haven't been able to get there. So in this budget, we're going to address that gap to make sure that the Brampton Entrepreneur Center can grow and be even more successful. And recently, if you looked at the BAC's social media presence online, you will realize there's a lot of funding programs and grants that are available to startups and entrepreneurs. Whether it is through the partnership with the federal government or the provincial government, we have the summer company programs, the Start a Company program, the Start a Company Plus program, and more recently, they announced a program called RAISE, which is more for I would say people of color, marginalized communities, racialized communities, for those startups to be able to access grants up to $10,000 for their startups. I don't have the rough numbers off my head, but do you remember in the past year how many you've got through the program?
It varied for each year depending on the funding, but that's
Yeah, most recently, I know through my digital Main Street program and the Startup Company programs, we've had rounds of $600,000 that we've had to allocate to small businesses. So all that support is available at the Brampton Entrepreneur Center. If you haven't visited that space yet or haven't looked it up online, I encourage everybody to look up that space online. And for businesses that are online with us today, this is an excellent opportunity for you to partner with us. And maybe there's mentorship that you can provide to startups, and we would be very open to talk about that.
I see there's a question in the chat about tree planting. I know this year we believe we'll plant 20,000 trees in the community. There's a number of partnerships we have for tree planting. Generally not in the winter, but we have tree planting events that take place across the city in
April to November.
And of course, September is tree planting month. But we'll get someone in the chat to respond with the details. I believe the spring dates are probably not announced, but we can share with you the organizations that we partner with for these tree planting events.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, for answering that question. Makisha, we had you lined up to ask that question next. Do you have anything further you wanted to ask on that?
Actually, no, thank you so much for letting me know about that. And to also let you guys know, I'm one of the first recipients of the Starter Plus program, and it has helped my business so much. And that's the reason why we expanded so much to be able to offer charity to organizations that do tree planting, because it's such a big important factor to our business model. So I'm happy that you guys are doing that now, because we were looking for events and looking for different programs that allow us to actually participate, but we couldn't find any, but we found some in Mississauga, unfortunately. So now I'm happy that I'm actually, for the first time, being part of this type of, what would you call it, organization. So I'm happy that to hear that we actually have that program, because it's really important to us. And being a recipient of the Starter Plus program, it's really helped my business. And I've been part of that program for so much. And hearing and seeing the things that you guys are doing for entrepreneurs like myself, it's helped so much. So I just wanted to say thank you as well. And thank you for answering my question.
Great, thank you so much, Makisha. I believe we have a question from Melissa Avabella on the line as well. Melissa, you can go ahead. Oh, yes.
But there's a question from
Melissa, but we do have another one from Glenn Williams. Glenn is asking, when staff began working on the budget, what was the target overall increase that they were told to work with, and how was the rate of increase determined?
Yeah, so I can answer that one. Staff are not told to work on the basis of an increase. We look at every budget and say what is something that is necessary for the city and what is something that would be nice to have. And so we understand the struggle that a lot of businesses are under, a lot of families are under with high inflation. And so we certainly don't work on it on the basis of a negative presumption. Departments are asked to come forward with their asks. We look at what was spent in the previous year. And so it's really an analysis based on the city needs. And there are some baked in expenses, obviously, with collective agreements that have a predetermined cost escalator. But we're trying our best to be as efficient as possible, knowing the challenges that our residents are facing.
Anywhere in the chat?
I don't see it.
There's one here that's related to medtech and medical sector. Looking at what support there would be health clinics, starting clinics in the city, perhaps an opportunity to speak with the medical school and medtech task force.
Yeah, and I know Councillor George taken a leadership role in this as well, but we are so elated to have the first new medical school in the GTA in 100 years, in a partnership with TMU. The doors are opening in the fall of 2025. The fact we're going to be training doctors locally, potentially working in our new hospital, just such a wonderful story. and news for our community. You know, our Deputy Mayor, Harkirat Singh, really outlined the opportunity that exists with the med school. There are going to be medical technology companies that want to work within the vicinity of a med school. And so there's an economic spin-off from having a med school. And so he's been leading the charge of our med tech task force. And we have representatives from TMU Medical School, industry partners, corporate representatives. And we got some major medical technology companies in our company, in our city. And so we're working with them as well. You look at the Boston Scientifics, you look at the Dynacares. You know, Brampton has opportunity to really grow in the sector. I went to the MedTech conference in Boston 3 or 4 years ago, and was really shocked by the opportunity that exists in the sector and the pace of growth in some of these companies. The Councillor Tor, if you want to sort of add to the work that you and our Deputy Mayor have been doing on this front.
Well, definitely. You know, we're very excited to start the MedTech Task Force. In fact, I think we're meeting again this week, and with industry leaders in the MedTech community at the table in order to draw that investment here, in order to make sure that, you know, our existing facilities, our existing lands that we have in the city of Brampton, that we can see that kind of development happen in conjunction with the new medical school. And I know part of the commitment from the university with the new medical school is to have 5 community clinics across the city that will collaborate with the medical school. You know, that would mean a more local training for local students that are going to the school and serving the community, giving back to the community through their practice. So that we're excited about those initiatives, but I know that if you're looking to start a new clinic, or if you're trying to get into the healthcare sector, into that business, we're happy to chat about that at economic development and find you opportunities through that and our planning division to see spaces that are available. If there's any you know, any ways that we can expedite the opening of your new business, we're happy to talk to you about that.
Great. Mayor Brown, Councillor Tor, we have a question in the chat from Glenn. Glenn is asking about signature projects, and he wants to know, will budget 2024 make any allowance or contingency for the possibility of local contributions being required for signature capital projects such as the Main Street LRT extension?
So a few things here. Yes, we continue to make a record contribution into our reserves. By record, each year, since I've been mayor, every year we have increased the amount that we put into the reserve, setting a new record every single year. We're now at a point where we're contributing more to the reserves than we have the capacity to spend on infrastructure. And so we do have to have some discussions at City Hall about whether we're taking too much from residents for our reserve contributions, but we do believe it's important to be ready for projects that potentially are on a cost share basis with federal, provincial governments if there is a local contribution. I would note on the LRT, that funding model has always been based on a federal provincial contribution, not a local contribution. And so we certainly don't want to set an example that we'd be prepared to accept a different cost share deal than other cities. Most recent examples have all been about a provincial federal 50-50 contribution. So in Hamilton, where they're building their LRT right now, their LRT significantly more costly than what we're asking for. And despite the fact that Hamilton is a smaller city and it's entirely on a 50-50 federal contribution. So, you know, I'll let all the residents and businesses on the call know now that I've been very clear that if other cities are offered 50-50 deals on infrastructure spending, we expect the same deal. We will not accept on any condition that Brampton will be treated at a disadvantage to other cities that are clearly on a different cost. I was bewildered 4 or 5 years ago when I saw talk that we'd be entering into a cost shared framework that was different than any other city. Yeah, I'm more than a little bit pointed on what I expect.
Just want to highlight, we did have a question whether the MedTech Task Force meeting is open to the public. Yes, it is indeed open begins at 4 p.m. and we've added the link for you to register in the chat. We do have another question from Narinder Paul, and they're asking, is the Brampton transit problem discussion open to public and business participation? And can some businesses work with the Brampton Transit to resolve their problems? And if yes, what is the criteria?
So, yes, we're taking emails on that right now. When the general manager and myself, and Heidi and myself started doing these bus rides around the city, we put out email addresses where you can submit feedback, a phone number you can call to submit feedback. We welcome feedback. I think what it comes down to is we need more operators. We need more Zoom buses. And so, you know, I love to know where there are challenges. I just hear from riders. I've heard, you know, this stop needs a shelter, or the frequency at this station at 5 o'clock is not met with demand. That type of feedback is very helpful. So please don't hesitate to send myself, Mayor Brown at Brampton.ca an email, or Heidi an email as well. And we'll share the link for our Brampton Transit feedback on the chat box as well.
If I can just add to that as well, we always welcome feedback from businesses because you know, there's an opportunity where Brampton Transit works with businesses to coordinate even with your shift times. When there's a large business and people are working through these shifts and we know everybody's going to leave work at a certain time, there's definitely a need for more buses. The most recent example was actually a request from Caledon with UPS site that is at Dixie and Mayfield, just north of Mayfield on the Caledon side. Brampton Transit worked with the town of Caledon and UPS to make sure that, you know, we can extend, I think it's number 18, that goes from my wards north and services UPS at eight times during the day, 4 times in the morning when their shift starts and 4 times in the evening when their shift ends, in order to transport all those employees. Because at the end of the day, it's still people from Brampton. They live in Brampton, they're residents of Brampton that might work around the city or sometimes even across the border. And we would love to make sure that we can transport them in a safe manner.
So we don't have any further questions in the chat, so we could ask one of the questions asked at registration, Claire.
Okay, I'm going to ask Claire a question.
Okay, there you go.
Because she's our director of economic development. And so, Claire, when we focus on job creation locally, one thing that I've heard from businesses is there's a distortion in the economy and the technology. We have to adapt. Imagine if we were a business selling VHSs or betas today, that business wouldn't exist. Look at how Blockbuster changed. You know, Blockbuster was this booming business and then all of a sudden gone. Imagine companies that were selling pagers, gone. And so, you know, one of our finest residents who passed away a few years ago, the former Premier Bill Davis, always talked about building the jobs of tomorrow. And that's when he created the college education system to meet labor market demands. Maybe, Claire, you could talk a little bit about how we're working with post-secondary education institutions on how to build the jobs of tomorrow, to work with local companies, and also the work that Economic Development Department is doing with the Innovation District. You might have noticed with a little bit of fanfare, we renamed the downtown GO station the Innovation District. We are building something special in downtown Brampton based on the jobs of tomorrow. So Claire, tell us why this Innovation District idea is something that is so passionate for your department right now.
Sure, thank you. Mayor can speak a little bit about that in our partnerships with post-secondary. We certainly try and encourage our businesses to work with local post-secondary. And the other area where we work with post-secondary is certainly that an example would be Algoma University and their programming. They will work with our businesses to ensure that their programming and the graduates that they are having graduate from their school will absolutely be hired locally in the jobs of tomorrow. And so what that actually means is tech-enabled jobs, innovation-focused jobs. And Sheridan College, we work really closely with, especially with the Magnus Field Trade Center and Camden, which is their manufacturing and tech hub, where we really try and make sure that we are working with our post-secondary on all sizes and all types of jobs of tomorrow. So the talent shortage and the talent requirements are about working at the Stellantis plant as it gets retooled, all the way to space robotics engineers that can work at Magna, their new center of excellence. The Innovation District, our goal is to create startups that scale and can graduate to become the next Canadian global businesses. And so once they've graduated from one of our incubators and accelerators, my team will work with them to help them stay in Brampton. Sometimes their products or services can be procured by the business in Brampton, but also globally. And there's a great example of a company, Roga, that was just graduated from the Brampton Venture Zone and signed a $35 million med tech deal with the largest Indian healthcare provider. And that just happened, and that's an excellent example of what we're trying to do.
Exciting. I'm really excited about what's happening with these jobs of tomorrow. And, you know, who knows, when you look at our startup incubators with the Beehive, or you look at some of the businesses working with the Brampton Entrepreneur Center, you know, if you support that ecosystem, you're going to see winners emerge. And, you know, you never know which idea has the ability to scale up. But if you support a lot of good ideas, a lot of good startups, one of them is going to blow up in a very meaningful fashion. So that's our goal, is to see an ecosystem that enables a future Fortune 500 company to be birthed out of Brampton.
And they are, and I think one of the things to add is that how are we different from other innovation districts around the world? And what we have heard from the businesses that are working with the startups, but also the startups themselves, is that it's a community and it's a diverse community. So diversity of thought, but also diversity of culture. Is there another question?
Yes, we do have another question regarding forecasting from Glenn Williams. Many peer jurisdictions use multi-year operating budget forecasts and 10-year capital budget forecasts. Will Budget 2024 implement any process changes to bring Brampton in line with that best practice?
So we do have 10-year capital budget forecasts that finance does. In terms of a previous practice that would forecast tax rate increases 3 years in advance, I disagree with that practice. I noticed they were never correct, and it created false assumptions for businesses. If the City Hall puts out a forecast 3 years from now, and businesses rely on that forecast, and it's incorrect 100% of the time, that's wrong. And so we have discontinued that practice in Brampton, given the fact that it was historically 100% inaccurate. And so we deal our best every year to have, as much as possible, minimal new burdens on businesses and families. As every year we go into the budget, and you can't predict some of the costs we're going to have. You could have predicted, you know, COVID. If you had a multi-year budget forecast on tax rate increases during COVID, you would have thrown that out of the window because there were so many new cost calculations. Right now, if you ask me to calculate what pressures we're going to face next year, even next year, I couldn't predict, because we don't know what's going to happen with regional dissolution. If the region appeal is dissolved, you could see catastrophic tax burdens being placed on the 3 municipalities. We looked at the White Report, and it showed it would be massive tax increases for Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon to deal with the dissolution, which, you know, I'm hopeful to mitigate with my advocacy to the provincial government. But there's an example that you really can't have accurate forecasting. That's why I prefer to only make commitments to businesses that we can honor, only make commitments of forecasting that we are 100% confident are going to be within the margin of error. And so this year, well, you know, we're doing our best. You know, I'd say my goal this year is to have the smallest burden for families and businesses in the GTA. We know that there will be some tax burden because we have a healthcare levy, we've got needs on transit, but the goal is to make that burden as minimal as possible so we can continue to foster and create a Brampton advantage. I want to be able to give Claire the tools and Gruppentop the tools to go out and pitch businesses and say that on a cost basis, it is in a business's self-interest to locate, to grow, to invest, to hire in Brampton. Are there any other questions?
I have a few more questions from Tom. He's asking, are there any new medical clinic buildings and proposal? Looking for a clinical space in Brampton and found it difficult. Can I have some extended support in these aspects?
So, sorry, Claire?
I was just saying we answer that a little bit on the next one.
Yeah. So, you know, we're happy to help look with you. Obviously, healthcare funding is regulated through the province. We've got the new hospital being built. Hopefully, construction will start next year. We're trying to keep the province to its timeline. We've got the new regional cancer center being built, and you know, we are always willing to look at in a creative fashion how to help from a planning process any business that wants to create medical space to service physicians in our community that want to build practice space. But Claire, if anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, certainly. Our team can certainly help with what we call a site selection, and that would be taking your criteria and where you would like to be and plotting that out for you and looking for that space. So if you want to put our investment services email in the chat, we can certainly help you with that.
And just to add to that, I know there's a few sites coming online in the near future where we've really held the line on making sure that there's ample office space that we're bringing to our city, because there's times when either you know, there's a request for 100% residential development or 100% industrial development, and we lose out on the office space, and the uncertainty around having those office spaces in the GTA don't necessarily translate to the same uncertainty in Brampton. So you know, from the top of my head, I can already think of a few projects in my area in Wards 9 and 10 where we're building more office spaces. So if you reach out to the Economic Development Office, they can help you select those sites.
I see there's a question about capital budget forecast. Yes. We can certainly have Nash provide that in the chat as well, so that you can see how we forecast our capital budgets.
Sorry, can you give me the question, please?
Yes. Will the 10-year capital budget be disclosed in the budget process, or is this just an internal forecast?
Yeah, so we can have Nash put that in the chat, and we can share you links to the council reports we've had on our capital budget forecast.
We do have one last question in the chat.
Okay, last question.
So it's two questions. Okay. The first one is, what is being done to ensure and enforce equitable and inclusive hiring practices among employers in our city? Supporting our youth from the EAC community, many continue to identify unfair and guarded hiring practices, with a prominent ethnic group accessing an overwhelming amount of the entry mid-level jobs based on the familiarity of the owners of many of our small businesses here in Brampton. So I'll leave that first, and then there's a second part.
Yes, so I think when it comes to small businesses who are doing hiring, City Hall wouldn't have input into their hiring, but certainly at City Hall, we strive to make sure City Hall reflects the mosaic of the city. And there's a number of internal programs in the city that encourage that. If you look at the work of whether it's Indigenous engagement, whether it's the anti-Black racism unit, there's an ongoing effort to make sure that we proactively highlight job postings, that we do our best to work on departments to make sure they reflect the city. And Brampton is the most diverse city in Canada. We did an equity audit in the previous term to look at hiring practices, to look at how we can, in a very deliberate fashion, better reflect the city. And I think in recent years, if you look at the mosaic of hiring, it really has been better reflective of the city. But this is an ongoing task that we take seriously. And I know Councillor Toor wanted to speak to this as well.
I'll just add to that to say that at the City of Brampton, we have the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusivity Office that not only looks at the hiring practices within the City of Brampton, but also takes that same lens to look at how policies, new policies that the City of Brampton is discussing and hoping to implement. How do those policies affect different groups? Based on gender, based on ethnicity, how those policies translate on ground. So we try to apply that lens to all our work that we do at the City of Brampton now for the last few years. And because of that, we've seen a lot of those changes, and hiring being one of them.
I'd add to that too. That's not just within the walls of City Hall. If you look at the work in the Innovation District, 80% of our founders within the Brampton Venture Zone are from underrepresented backgrounds, 87%. And I'm gonna ask Allison to put in the chat the Brampton Entrepreneur website lists our engagement with BIPOC entrepreneurs, and we can share that link so you can see some of the work the city's doing to truly lean into our mosaic.
And, when I spoke about the broader cybersecurity catalyst earlier as well, they've done amazing work. They've graduated more than 7,000 people through their programs, and I'm so delighted to say that more than 50% of those are women. More than 70% of those were people of a visible minority group. Part of that work is training them, helping them get into the workforce, helping them access those jobs that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. These are high-skilled jobs in the cybersecurity field, and that's just one example. Like the mayor mentioned, we're doing the same at the Brampton Entrepreneur Center, and every single one of our partners that are part of the Innovation District is committed to doing the same. What's the second part to that question, please?
Yes, the second part to the question has to do with the current economic climate. It's resulted in an increased need for mental health resources, housing supports, food security services, youth development programs, and they're asking, what are the plans to prioritize these areas of concern through funding to nonprofit organizations that are currently supporting these community members?
So I'll jump in here. Maybe Councillor Chor can add. In terms of the area of municipal jurisdiction, we are building youth centers in the city. The first one was just unveiled at South Fletcher's, and we've got another bill underway as we speak. And so we are, moving forward in an ambitious fashion with sort of youth centers. In terms of mental health funding, that is at the discretion of the provincial government. We continue to do advocacy to get more mental health funding. I would note the second hospital that is being built will have a mental health component to it. We're going to have a dedicated mental health floor. So I can't wait to see that new hospital open, because some of the wait times for mental health are staggeringly long. And I do hope we can treat mental health with the same seriousness that you do physical health. If you go into a hospital with a broken arm, they care for you. But sometimes mental health, you're told, for youth counseling, there's a 9-month wait, and we have to do better. And Brampton will continue to advocate for those mental services to be available in Ontario and in Brampton. We also can't criminalize mental health. There's a lot of people that are struggling with addictions, and we're changing the way we do policing. We have a mental health response team that we got funded to have the right people respond to the right challenges. And so there is, we're adapting municipal services to have a heightened awareness of sensitivities around mental health. A person in a mental health crisis, we'll push as best we can to get the proper mental health services available within our healthcare system in Brampton. Yeah,
so there's also available for businesses is Welcoming Streets, and it's a pilot in the downtown, which is run through economic development to support businesses should they come across customers who have a mental health challenge and they aren't sure how to handle it, rather than calling the police. They can call this team. We can certainly put the contact details in the chat. And they came about post-COVID because we saw the rise of mental health issues downtown, and that businesses needed some support on how to manage that.
And just to add to that, Councillor Santos is on the line, but again, she's at the conference, so I'll try to speak on her behalf. on this. Earlier this year, she brought up the issue about mental health, especially in our school systems. There's a sharp decline in mental health amongst youth in our city, and we see that, and we've discussed about this at the city level, at the region of Peel level, because both at the city and at the region of Peel, we have a community safety well-being office and a crisis table that they call it, where we try to get different agencies together at the table, including the police, including community health services. We have the Punjabi Community Health Services. There's other organizations like that that work in that same space to get them to the same table to find these solutions and see how municipalities can be part of that solution. In the not-for-profit sector, I know there's a lot of difficulties. You mentioned with staffing shortages, people working overtime trying to do the good work that you guys do. And we appreciate that. And that's why, some of our RFPs, there's one RFP that we still have out there that we would love to see a not-for-profit, express their interest towards is the community, is the commercial kitchen space that is available by the City of Brampton. Right here next to City Hall, it's a fantastic space, a full industrial commercial kitchen that is available for anybody that is interested in operating a program out of there. You simply have to just submit your proposal through the RFP process that is online right now. And I think the deadline for that is coming soon. But we encourage you, if you're in that space, if you're in that food insecurity space, to please apply to that RFP, and we will drop a link to that RFP in the chat here. So do look at that, and if you have other members of the community that might benefit from that, do encourage them to do so as well.
We have a few more questions in the chat. Glenn has another question with regards to the regional dissolution. How will budget 2024 address the many unknown variables stemming from regional dissolution and a corresponding shift in municipal responsibilities?
So we don't know what any shift will be. We don't know. There's been no answers yet from the provincial government on what may become a municipal responsibility, what will be dealt with through a shared servicing board, or if the province looks at this and says it's too costly to proceed. And so, the city's had about, I think, over 70 questions posed to the transition team in the province, and we don't have any responses yet. Even the most simplistic, we don't have an answer on. For example, will the Peel Police continue to exist under a dissolution? We don't even have a response to that. And so it would be premature to have financial calculations based on a provincial decision that has yet to be made on any of these points. We are pushing them to make decisions as soon as possible, but there is no responses yet. And frankly, the more you look at this, the more problematic I think the province is finding it. It is very challenging to dissolve services that are largely integrated.
One last question regarding the Brampton Civic Hospital. It's one of the largest psychiatric hospitals in Canada. It was never designed for this. What steps are Brampton taking to make better treatment for mental health? Toronto is setting up their own separate department for 911 to respond to medical calls.
So I would say the allocations for funding within the hospitals this is entirely a provincial decision. We're doing our advocacy for additional supports, but ultimately it's not a call that we get to make in the city of Brampton. That is up to the Minister of Health. And if I look at some of the investments they've made into CAMH in Toronto, would love to see that type of support in Brampton. I am optimistic that the investments they're making into mental health in the new hospital will be very positive, really to be a center of excellence on mental health. But until it's built, until construction starts, until the operating dollars are assigned from the province, I remain cautiously optimistic, but I want to see it open. Part of the challenge when building a new hospital, you can have those detailed plans announced, and they have been announced for this mental health center, but the operating dollars need to follow too. And I just worry sometimes provincially there's a lag in these announcements to the actual opening.
So we don't have any further questions in the
Okay,
chat.
well, I guess that completes our questions, and so I want to thank everyone for sharing their feedback, for the businesses that joined us this morning to share your feedback. Don't hesitate to share anytime your continued ideas. Let me conclude just by a little note of optimism. You know, Brampton is extraordinary, despite the challenges we're facing, despite the challenges, whether it's dissolution, high inflation, interest rates. We continue to be amazed. You know, Councillor Tour feels the same way when we go on these tours to new businesses in Brampton. It's inspiring to see the innovation, the creativity, the entrepreneurialism that radiates from our city. And you know, I tell you, you could speak to any other city in the country, and they'd be envious of some of the economic development wins we've seen happening in Brampton. There's a reason that businesses are choosing Brampton. There is a Brampton advantage that is very consistently emerging, and we're going to continue to foster that. We want to see more explosive investment in our community. We want Brampton to be the easiest place to build a business, to create jobs, and to hire and invest and grow in Canada. So thank you for being part of today's engagement, and we will keep you up to date on this budget process. The budget will be publicly made available after we finish all the coffee chats and town halls on November 29th, and the council will deliberate it during the month of December. So thank you all for your feedback, and I hope you have a great, fruitful day. We off now?